Right, good evening everybody. Welcome to this meeting of Broadland District Council Cabinet on Thursday the 20th of March. I would just bring you to your attention that this is a public meeting and it is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Are we streaming now? Thank you. So if I take us to the agenda then, so item 1 is declarations of interest. I would just like to declare an interest myself as a Director of Broadland Living, although I don't think it has any financial bearing on the papers that are coming forward. Does anybody else have anything I'd like to?
The same one as you, yeah.
Thank you. So in that case, can I take us to apologies for absence? Minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 20th of March 2025. So if we have all had a good look at the last minutes, does anybody have any comments they wish to make about any of the items as listed therein? No? So we can confirm that those are an accurate record then. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 4 then, public speaking. Do we have any public speaking, James?
There's no public speaking.
Thank you. Item 5, overview and scrutiny. Would the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny like to give some comments, please?
Thank you. I thought it was a good meeting we had discussing this because it was nice when we have items that come together which are symbiotic and actually do seem to match sometimes, you know, because sometimes meetings can be very much looking at a lot of dispersed items. But with regard to the first issue of best-in-class temporary accommodation purchase, there was a lot of good questions. I think 8 different councillors spoke on this, including one councillor who had rather a lot of questions, but I didn't begrudge him that because he was a substitute member and he asked some really good questions. And I think we really dug into the makeup of the housing and the real mixture of it, and the fact that we're not taking on too much too quickly. We're taking it on in a way which seems to be very much based on the growth that is needed, and everything was in that regard was supported unanimously. We also felt that the local lettings cascade policy seemed to be the perfect time to be bringing this in. They go together. It makes really good sense. We're really pleased to hear that it's sort of in response to being more about being ahead of the game on this rather than having to respond to us having holes in our policy. So again, that was supported by everybody. The the Broadland statement of community involvement was quite funny, that the only recommendation was that we really didn't need to look at it and didn't need to consult with the public on it, because actually it deals with consultation with the public. We decided we didn't need to consult with the public to actually not change our policy on how well we consult with the public. So it was one of those, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And the Broadland District Council Risk Management Policy Update just made complete sense, and again was supported by everybody. So we all seem very happy with it, although we did ask, I think, a lot of very good questions and proved the worth of all of the policies.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you. Right, so that brings us to item 6, representations from non-cabinet members. Does anybody, non-cabinet member, wish to make any comments? Lovely, thank you very much. So that brings us on to item 7, which is the best-in-class temporary accommodation purchase. So that is, I think, Steve, did you want to have anything to say about that?
Can you hear me? Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think the place to start with the report is actually the last decision we took in March of the Cabinet, which was to accept the LHF funding of £638,400. That was to match fund 3 temporary and 1 resettlement property. We accepted that, and the report also agreed, we agreed under that report, that we would also move forward to forming a business case in terms of how to finance and the numbers of temporary accommodation in total. Previously, I think it's worth saying, on the LHF, we've received match funding for all the properties we have purchased. This time round, we did not receive the funding that we'd applied for in total due to the scheme being oversubscribed, and therefore we only received enough match funding for 3 properties plus 1 resettlement. The need, however, as amplified within the report, sorry, not amplified, but as reported, as the report contains under section 3.3, 3.1, clearly demonstrates our need is much greater than that. And we have a business case here that supports the purchase of 15 properties plus for family use, plus another 6 HMOs via the purchase of 2 family houses. You will see within the report as well that we have predicted on this that this will save us 386,000 of the 810,000 that we've allocated for B&B this year. And then you will also see within the report there is another issue coming our way on the 5-year prediction in terms of increased demand that is also contained within the report, which will raise those costs to us to 1.5 million, going on beyond over 2 million over a period of 3 years. So this is significant pressures within the council, and also in terms of our statutory obligation, which we have to meet, and in terms of providing quality temporary accommodation, which B&B, by any stretch of the imagination, does not really do to the same extent. So the table I'd also like to draw your attention to, excuse me, is under 3.4. You'll see in there, and we've included this in there, that the sort of figures that I've just mentioned that will be incurring in 26, 27, 28, 27, 28, and in 26, 27, as it stands at the moment of predicted demand, we'll be looking at probably purchasing a further 20 HMO and also a further 15 family units. However, what's important to point out, and I know this is reported at ONS, I did watch it, that we will need to review this when we get into the end of 25, 26 to ensure that demand is still there. The predictions so far have proved absolutely accurate. We don't expect they're going to change, but we do need to review it at that point of time. And when we get there, of course, that will have to be financed. So very much this business plan is a way forward in terms of its premise around internal borrowing, capitalising to a degree via Broadland, but then also borrowing when the interest rates are right, and also what equity would leave in to help fund future in terms of demand as well, and using the principles of capital gearing in that, which could probably come in next time round. So it's a very strategic report, gives a clear way forward. And I'd just like to say also the business modelling that we are using, which Lindsay has actually developed for us, comes off the back of the first LHF when we was looking at the whole way we was going to finance this. And I remember that meeting, which involved a number of officers. We had to keep going back to officers. Officers had to keep trying to dig the information out over a number of meetings. I think we had 5 meetings at that point, so we could actually get all the data together to be able to iterate what business plan we needed. The matrix that Lindsay's put together has built upon that, and it now means that we can go to that matrix and very clearly and quickly put in our different assumptions, the different amounts and interest rates, etc., so we can arrive at the proper business decision to make. That will decide when, as well, we go to borrowing and how much capital we leave in at that point, and depend upon where the market and interest rates are, of course. And that's about it. I'm sure that Lindsay and Richard would probably supplement this. And thanks for the work that the team and the hours we spent together on this is much appreciated.
Over to you, Lindsay.
Thank you very much. There isn't really a lot to add really to what Councillor Riley has said. He has gone through most of what is in the paper in the business case. The only thing I would like to make clear as well is, yes, there are numbers that are predicted for next year that we may need to come back and purchase, but we do have a whole programme of work within the housing team for preventing the need for temporary accommodation and hopefully getting people out of temporary accommodation a bit quicker. So we are hoping that this programme of work will yield some results within the year that's going to change those figures, and we're hoping that when we come back next year and review our position, that actually it has brought those numbers down slightly. But no, everything else has been covered, unless you have anything you'd like to add.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, that makes perfect sense, because clearly otherwise the figures just keep going up and up and up, don't they? So, and I think that's one of the examples I would suggest where district councils come into their own, don't they? Because we're working in our communities to try to prevent some of those further problems. Does anybody have any questions or comments they want to make about this paper?
Thank you. Obviously, I'm sure there'll be some questions around the finance of it, but I just want to comment on the morality of it. It is absolutely the right thing to do to provide more sustainable accommodation for our communities. I'm going to say I was doing the maths the other day. I wasn't. I asked somebody to send me a spreadsheet of just how many units of accommodation we've bought. And since this administration, 47 units of temporary accommodation has been purchased. That's quite astonishing for a council of this size. And that's in addition to the resettlement homes. And it just shows how seriously we are taking this. And yes, obviously it's cheaper than bed and breakfast. It always will be. But to provide the right kind of safe accommodation is absolutely the right thing to do. So again, thank you to everybody who's done all the work on this. It's much appreciated.
Lovely, thank you very much. Yes, I think we can all agree actually that having a home to live in is considerably better than for children especially to end up in some sort of bed and breakfast with no real stability. But anybody got any other comments about the business plan as it stands?
Thanks, Chair. And just to follow on from that, and I'm sure we're also ensuring that you know we're looking at energy efficient housing as well. That you know is comfortable to live in as temporary accommodation. I just a point of clarification really is for anyone online watching and for myself, why not go to external borrowing straight away?
Excuse me. You see on page 31, this is a part of the report which I asked the officers to include here, because you'll see that Appendix 1, indicative net costs per year on loan of, say, 50%. So all that is an indicative demonstration, but it was tried to give people the idea of where this could end up. So you see there, it says it's based upon assumption of 92% occupancy. Originally, when we did our assumptions going back on the first LHF, very conservative, we did 80%. The actual operating experience is 92%, which makes a big difference. And we were right to go conservative in the first place. It's always best to do that because we're in that much better place. And we know this actually real. 50% loan and 5% interest rate. You will see, when you look at the bottom of the table, that actually covers all costs, maintenance, everything else, including the interest payments. But it also gives us an additional income above that, and you'll see on HMOs of over £2,000, and on the two beds of 300. It's slight, but the point about that is that's just giving an indication of how this can work. And of course, when we do that and we bring in the loan, we'll now bring in capital, which we then use this gearing 2, which is referred to then purchase further properties, which then alleviates our capital drain within the council. And we could get to a stage on this where we're not spending really any capital from Broadland. So this is quite an exciting thing, and I know the team know that I get really excited about it, but it's really using the tools that are out there in the business world for the benefit of the taxpayer in the best possible way and for the right moral reasons and their statutory obligation as well, not just in terms of revenue. So the point about that is, at the moment, we would not go and borrow at that rate because we suspect, myself and Rodney, we know in actual fact that these rates on the public works loan are stuck at the moment due to the bond rate. Part of that's being caused by Trump, part of it's being caused by national issues that are going on. But we do expect they will drop further. So if we was to now borrowing at this rate, it could be in 3 months, 4 months, they're going to drop. They are going to drop, and therefore we'd have fixed in at 5 years or whatever, too high. So we're going to continuously monitor, me and Rodney monitoring this all the time. I do it at home, Rodney does it in here, but we do it together as well. And then also at what capitalisation we want to leave in. Could be 50%, could be 40%, it depends. So we'll make that judgment at the right call, but where it stands at the moment with the public loans, works loans, that rate will shift. Don't fix it now. So we have to make that judgment as we go.
Okay, so my question again, it would be about voids. Are we're happy that we've covered the right number of, so it's doable with that?
Yes, it is. And I'm also looking to put that into one of our performance measures for next year, which will be reported to Cabinet to make sure that we can keep an eye on that void figure. That's based on the last 6-9 months that we've been recording our voice performance. So it's a pretty accurate figure, and it's the kind of target I'll be looking at putting into the quarterly performance.
Good, because I mean that is something we do need to keep monitoring, isn't it? Just to make sure we stick to the, you know, we are at the right level. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to agree with my colleagues, really. I think the figures that Councillor Hartley states about 47 units really speak for themselves around the commitment of this administration as far as delivering, as far as temporary accommodation goes. And not only that, we're pressing on and we're ambitious to achieve even more. And I don't think anybody who's got any insight into what's going on at Broadland District Council could question our commitment to delivering as far as temporary accommodation is concerned. What is brilliant is the fact that it is so backed up by this business case, which everything has to get past my colleague, Councillor Riley, before we spend anything with it in this authority. That is an excellent safeguard for the residents of Broadland. So I wholeheartedly endorse this paper.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much. Yes, if you can spend any money, you've got to convince Steve it's worth doing. Martin.
Yeah, thank you. I'm fully in support of this, but when do we think external borrowing is likely to begin, and at what level do interest rates need to be for that?
I think I tried to sort of cover that really with, but you can see from the indicative here, 5% interest rate with 50% loan, you can see there that it all stacks up. However, we're not going to borrow a loan because we believe the interest rate is going to drop. But if you drop that to 4%, it just gets better and better. So that figure at the bottom there, instead of 2,300, would actually be edging 5,000 over and above it covering the interest rates. So it just gets better. That's why it's just an indicative one. If we thought that interest rates were going to stick at 5% for the next 5 years, we'd do it now and put in the capital so we can help alleviate the capital issues in Broadland, but also finance other properties, be ready for it. But it's not quite there yet, Rodney. And it really does depend a lot upon what is happening across the sea in Mr. Trump land and also nationally, because even though interest rates are dropping retail, you can go out there and now get an interest rate for a mortgage at just over 4%, actually, I saw the other day. That's not the same thing that is occurring with public borrowing. So that's been affected by the bond market and what Trump is doing around tariffs in particular. So we know it's going to get stuck for a while, but it will end up dropping, so we wouldn't go now.
I think given 5% is quite high in terms of the last 15, 20 years, really. But that's a reasonable figure to be, if we're happy with that, but waiting for it to drop, then that's quite a good thing. Did somebody else have a finger in the air?
Because some might be concerned about, well, the fact that, you know, we're increasing the number of properties, but as point 5 says under Cabinet to agree, in terms of managing these properties, that the recruitment to one FTE officer for every additional purchase of 10 units of temporary accommodation was agreed as part of the operating model, and I guess we're going to continue with that so that you know, we're in a position to manage the situation as we increase our temporary accommodation. So it's just making that comment, really. We're in a position to manage effectively the temporary accommodation that we're increasing in numbers.
Okay, so are we all happy if I just take us to the recommendations then? Yeah. Okay, so I don't propose to read all of these out, but there are the recommendations to Council about creating a capital budget of 3.412 million. There's the second option to fund up to 50% of the total contribution from remaining monies in the Opportunities Fund and the Broadland Growth Reserve. And it does mention the initially internal borrowing will be undertaken for the amount not funded by the reserves, and we will then only do external borrowing when it falls to an appropriate level. and that the contribution from the reserves and the timing of the borrowing to be determined by the Assistant Director of Finance in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance. So those recommendations, are we all happy to agree those? Yeah. And then we also have some recommendations to agree subject to the decisions that might be taken by full council. So we are agreeing those recommendations to council. Assuming that this goes through with full council, then we are then going to recommendation 4, which is to delegate authority to the Director of Resources in consultation with the S151 officer to authorise purchases of properties and associated costs up to the allocated funding limits. 5 is to confirm the previously agreed operating model of the recruitment, and this is the one times full-time equivalent officer for every additional purchase of 10 units of temporary accommodation. The cost of these roles can be charged through rent and housing benefit and therefore will be a nil cost to the council. And 6 is to delegate authority to the Director of Resources to renegotiate the SLA with Broadland Living Limited to make sure all property stock is properly managed and maintained. Are we happy to agree those recommendations? Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you both. Right. Lovely, so that brings us on to item 8, which is the local lettings cascade policy. And I think that's your portfolio, Natasha. Would you like to say anything first?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, we've revised this policy. It is separate to our general allocations policy, but it fits in very nicely alongside it. And the intention really is to give not only some more certainty and clarification around where the local connection lies, but also to give more weight towards people with that local connection, because currently there are people who are on our housing register and if they're lower need, they're kind of languishing there for quite a while, so this will help give them more chance of getting an affordable home for rent. The main change is really, apart from there is the cascade, which I'm sure you'll talk about in a bit more detail, but I think one of the standout things is that currently under the policy we have it so that the home that is rented for social rent is on a first let only. What we want to do is to change it for, in some cases, in perpetuity, so it'll keep those homes. I hate to sound like that TV show, Local Homes for Local People, but that's basically what it is. So we think this is a really good policy. It will help build a bit more community cohesion, particularly around greater development. It perhaps get people on board with those developments and just build stronger communities and help get people moving on the housing register. So I'll hand over to the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wiley. I won't talk too much more. You've covered the main parts. Just to give a bit more clarification on the cascade, it now includes former residents, neighbouring parishes, and more defined timescales to provide that certainty that you were talking about. At present, Broadland District Council currently has less than 400 local letting policy properties, and they rarely come up to let because they are on exception sites. Comparable LAs, local authorities who have it in perpetuity, have in excess of 2,000 properties, and they do tend to come up a lot more regularly. The local lettings policy, by doing it in perpetuity, what you tend to see is where there's great delivery in an area, it tends to resolve the general housing needs within that area, so people aren't forced down the homeless route or anything like that. So it tends to allow local areas to navigate their housing need, and by putting it in perpetuity, that just provides it for a longer term, whereas first let only just deals with it in the first let. So by taking this approach, we are able to confidently say that local residents who will be facing the new builds being delivered in their area, that these properties will be for the local people within that area. So you can confidently say, don't worry, that house will be available to one of your children when they get to that age. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else have any comments they'd like to make on this one?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure we can be quite that specific, can we, Richard? But I'm with plans. I entirely get the point that you're making, and you raise these policies in terms of the feedback we receive and the experience that we go along with. I think the new policy does look very strengthened in that respect, and I'm happy to award.
Anybody else got anything they'd like to say? No? No?
On a very minor point, you called me Councillor Riley on. Now.
I think that's say what you see, and he sat opposite me, so I do apologise.
Okay, so leaving that little incident aside, are we all happy with with the local lettings policy? If so, say aye. And that recommendation basically is we recommend to council to agree and adopt the proposed changes to the local lettings policy. Lovely. All right, thank you very much indeed. Right, welcome Ben. So this brings us on to item 9, which is the Broadland Statement of Community Involvement Formal Review, March 2025. Would you like to say anything about that, Dan?
Thank you. So this is one of those once every 5-year events that we have in terms of reviewing the Statement of Community Involvement. It's come round again. It's 2025. And it does exactly what it says on the tin as far as paragraph 1.1 is concerned within the main report on page 48. There's one very small non-material change to be made, which is on paragraph 1.12 of the policy itself, where it will need to correctly reference the right strategic plan and priority, which of course for the Broadland District Council strategic plan is providing the right homes in the right places. Other than that small update, I'm happy to recommend to Cabinet.
Lovely, thank you. Would you like to add anything, Ben?
I can go on about this for hours if you want, but there's very few things to add. It's a very factual document, it's procedural, it's legislative, we need to do it, and that's all I've got to say, really.
So noting the fact that you've specified the item where it basically refers to the South Norfolk and Broadland strategic plan, which is not quite correct, so we're going for the Broadland. So subject to that being changed, then can I ask that we all agree the recommendation, which is to approve the formal review to the Broadland Statement of Community Involvement? Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Well, that wasn't too bad, was it? That brings us to item 10, which is the risk management policy update. And who's the portfolio holder for that? No, I've got myself open. Is it me? Is it still me? Right. Well, I'm going to dip out and say, Matt, would you like to give us the information about the new policy? Thank you.
Of course, good evening. The risk management policy update that you have proposed in your pack reflects a review against good practice and an attempt to tighten the application of risk management so that it is more practical and concrete for both officers and members, so that the communication and the actual practical application of risk management has less burden and less room for misinterpretation in the communication. It shifts focus away from the strategic risk registers themselves and more towards strategic or overall risk management system performance, and it increases the explicit focus on inherent risks as well as residual risks, so that we keep an eye on both types in order to understand the justification of our controls and whether additional controls are needed. It also shifts focus towards the existing controls that we maintain rather than previous or past mitigating actions. That more concrete and practical approach should particularly be seen in the word pictures for the overall risk rating, for how that translates to risk appetite, and in the impact and likelihood word pictures that contribute towards that overall risk rating. That covers the overview of the changes, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
Hi, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to reiterate, really, this really did needed updating. And I noticed also the Chair of Audit, ONS, viewed ONS, also made comment about the way that the focus is now much clearer, the way we present as well is much clearer. And I know that myself and Sue, when we went through this with you, we spent quite a considerable amount of hours on this, and even though one wouldn't think so, it took a lot of seeing to see where improvements could be made. And the way this is set out now, I think is really focused and really clear, and it does help. It will certainly help the audit committee as well in terms of what it does. And I believe portfolio holder responsibility on risk, which we have, and all of us have, in terms of their various responsibilities. So yeah, I basically totally commend the report, Chair.
Yes, thank you. I think actually the portfolio, it comes under as finance, but I have to say Steve and I have been putting quite a lot of effort with this, haven't we, Matt? So we've had quite a lot of meetings looking at these things, because I do think risk management is one of those things it's very easy to misunderstand. And I think it's really important that we make it easy enough for people to get where we're going with it. And I think I do think the improvements will help there. It does make things much clearer. Jan, did you have a question you want to ask?
Yes, I think you might know where this is coming from. I'm just wondering where, anticipating, what may come along in terms of, the risks that we may be exposed to, or the hazards, the threats that we might be exposed to, and where that comes in this process, really, just to clarify that.
So it adds two aspects of guidance on that. One is clear and explicit guidance that should be part of day-to-day activities, and as risks are identified, they should be communicated to start with and managed, and with communication along the way as they are managed. And it also includes a specific point that risk identification workshops should be conducted for each risk register at least once a year as well, to make sure that we are taking that time to step back from the day-to-day work and to look at those longer term risks, or those risks that might not be so apparent when we look at that day-to-day risk right now.
Yeah, you can tell we had the discussion about what's a risk and what's a hazard. So we might have to disagree. But I do think this makes it really much clearer. So are we all happy then if we take this item and we go to the recommendation? Good. Okay, so that is that Cabinet recommend to Council to approve the proposed Broadland District Council risk management policy update, and we're all happy to take that forward. Lovely. Thank you. So that just brings us to item 11, which is the forward plan. I don't think there's any surprises on there. We've got a reasonable number of items coming forward. I think it's very clear which ones are which. Does anybody have any comments they want to make about the forward plan as we go forward now? No, we're all happy with that. Okay then, thank you very much. In that case, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.